Hello, all my comic book friends. It's Sleepy Reader, Damien. Wish I could have hung out with some of you this week or weekend, but life did not turn out that way. This is going to be kind of a mildly grumpy episode of comic book thoughts. Mostly just because I've been grumpy all week, and I on Wednesday was hoping my comic books would cheer me up more than they did. And I'm not grumpy about anything in particular, just little things. Just not the greatest week at work and other stuff. I would have liked to have given you my comic book thoughts Friday night or even Thursday night, but too tired or too busy. When I went to the comic book store, I was a bit shocked that one of my pull books had suddenly become a 100-page super spectacular. I think I'm going to take this off the pull. I don't want to have to feel obligated to my comic book store to swallow down this $10 comic book. It felt like there were other comic books I might have liked to have bought that I felt like I had to put a cap on my spending. So I had to stop and not get some other things that I might have liked to have picked up this week. This was a monthly that had 30 pages each month of stuff that had been published originally digitally online, and it was all shorter stories, 10, 20, sometimes 30 pages. This one has a 70-page story in it, and that story also looks like it might be an old file story from the early 2000s or even the 90s. It has a much more of a 90s feel to it. And I found the art kind of ugly, although in reading the whole thing, and I felt like I had to read the whole thing or I'd never read it. It would just get shuffled off in the piles. Reading this, there's a 70-page story in here by Dan Mishkin and Tom Mandrake. And reading the whole thing, the storytelling actually was done very well, if a bit on the nose. There was nothing fancy about it at all. It was a detective novel starring Batman involving the Catholic Church. And there were conversations between Batman and priests and stuff. And all of that seemed like kind of clever elements. There was the traditional detective novel scene, going back to the beginning of detective novels where the detective, Batman, brings all the suspects into one room, this time a church, and presents his evidence, and one of them confesses, and some violence ensues at that point. It's an early Batman who the police are hunting down, so he doesn't have the police on his side at all at this point. So it's kind of an interesting story, just not what I wanted out of this, and just kind of an interesting story. It was a bit meh too in many ways. Not what I wanted out of this, which was sort of the sharper kind of mythic Batman stories that we normally get. There was one like that at the end, a 20-page Harley Quinn story where Harley Quinn convinces Batman to let her psychoanalyze him. Although first they have a big fight scene, which was pretty fun, and then she convinces him to be psychoanalyzed, but he refuses to even sit down. But eventually we learn why he's even going through this at all, and there's a good reason, and it's pretty clever and pretty fun. But there, I wasn't too keen on the art, maybe mostly because there was this style of coloring that just puts kind of a dark haze on everything. The pencil art probably was really good, but the coloring kind of ruined the art for me. So I didn't feel, starting with this first issue of the 100-page spectacular, which I have to say is 90 pages of story, of actual story. So maybe there's 100 pages total, but that includes ads and stuff. Although it's kind of a value for page for your money, I'm not sold on this, and I'm going to take it off my pull list so I don't have to feel committed to buying it. I can still pick it up if the shop has copies and if it looks good to me and I have the money. So that started off my grumpiness, I suppose, or kept my grumpiness going. What should have been a good cure for my grumpiness was this Batgirl number 26. It was very good. I love the pulpy cover here. I think that Gail Simone did a great job of wrapping up this particular story arc and making it satisfying, but keeping threads going that will go into the future, keep the sort of soap opera of the Gordon family intact. So I thought it was very cool issue, good art. within the framework of a kind of gritty Gotham story. Very good. I hope Simone just keeps on trucking this way. I hope they don't get in her way so much. I'm sure they've hurt sales for Batgirl the way they've cut into it with all the other things going on. And if you think about it, something like Batgirl is something that someone like me going in with his daughter to the store would pick up, but it wouldn't make any sense the way they've chopped up the storylines so much with all the crossover events. With a daughter older than mine, this is obviously too gritty for her. Speaking of gritty and gory, hide your children now. Don't let your coworkers watch this. I'm going to show you pages from Shaolin Cowboy. I still like the Jeff Darrow art, and that's the whole reason for getting this. But he continued 12 more pages of this single scene of chopping zombies with his swirling chainsaws. And then they ran out of gas, and then a long sequence of him jumping on the heads of zombies and squishing their brains. Kind of funny, but the joke's on me. I'm going to keep getting it. You can't get much Darrow art out there anyway. So some is better than none. But I do feel like his skills and talents could be put to better use, even just within the context of this story, to give us a little more, to be a little more inventive. After a while, it's just repetition beyond the goof of repeating it. It's almost like he's low on ideas or something. So yeah, I felt a bit grumpy about that. Lazarus, I've really been loving Lazarus. I think that after the first arc, which appeared in the trade, and I guess there must have been a month's hiatus, wasn't there? And now this is out with the terrible cover, but the art on the inside is still great. It's moving along pieces of the story, getting some backstory on her childhood. I'm not that impressed by their idea of what her upbringing was like. Oh, we'll just kind of pressure her. She loves her father, and her father denies her love unless she succeeds at becoming a killer. It just seemed pretty simple there. We get a view of, I guess, some people in the Waste, but these are pretty successful people in the Waste. I guess they're ranchers or farmers or something, but they're not getting the help that they paid for. So is the Waste more like a struggling middle class after all? I thought it was going to be, like people living in the equivalent of the favelas in Rio de Janeiro or something, the deep slums of the world, where people have to scrounge over heaps of garbage for their daily sustenance. But so far we haven't seen that kind of waste. But my overall feeling is this is kind of buying time and searching around for what's going to happen next. I'm still going to keep getting it. I like it. I like the art. I like the way Rucka paces his writing. I don't think his ideas... I'm suspecting his ideas aren't that deep. I'm also feeling like maybe if they had an editor, that might help. Of course, a good editor. It seems like bad editors can ruin books, but I think they can also really help people shape their stories and stuff. These Vertigo books maybe need better editors. FBP, I'm going to stick with it, but I wasn't wowed by this issue. It introduces a new and interesting character, and I'll be interested to see how that develops. I'm interested in our other lead character, the man Adam's backstory, and what we're going to learn further about his father, and perhaps more about the background of the physics anomalies, since his father was studying that. But there's nothing more on that here. This is just establishing this character and showing us that the Federal Bureau of Physics is on hard times. So, an okay issue. Coffin Hill, I've decided to dump. There's nothing bad about this, but it just seemed like a lot of cliches to me from horror movies done in a way that doesn't give me anything new, exciting, and I feel like I don't sense that the author's really gonna wow me in the future. There was all that muddle in the first issue, no sign of resolving any of that or addressing any of that, and then just some kind of cliches from various movies and TV shows I've seen. maybe this isn't even best suited for comic books. The artist Inaki Miranda is doing a yeoman's job trying to make it work, but I don't know if it really is suitable for a comic book. Very suitable for a comic book, but unlike any kind of comic book that you'd normally read, is Alex and Ada, the issue 2 of the story of a low-key heartbreak of a young man and his grandmother giving him this sex robot, sex android. The pacing is unique and the art is unique. It's just a comic book with its own voice and a good science fiction, a good grasp of how to create a science fiction world, so that every little detail feels like it's from a future that could really be. So I really enjoyed on that level. Not a whole lot happened in this issue, but there's still a kind of full issue feeling to it, a full chapter in the continuing story. So I'm enjoying getting this. I'm sure it'll be great in a trade, but I'm enjoying getting this in single issues. And finally, Astro City. I also enjoyed this. We've got a superheroine who's called Winged Victory, kind of like Wonder Woman, in a way better than Wonder Woman. She really has, created a whole organization that is centered around women and helps women to be empowered and has nothing to do with men. And it gives some of her backstory. There's a little bit of a, why did this person get picked? Because it turns out she got picked by some powers of, women, mythical women powers, to chose her as kind of their avatar to represent women. Why she was picked, she was just running around Europe because her heart was broken by a rather callow man who cheated on her. But this is just picking on it, because overall it's a good story. I really like the way her relationship with the Superman-like character, the Samaritan, is portrayed. It's very, very much, in a few quick panels and pages, Kurt Busiek creates a believable, grown-up relationship between the two of them. The people over at DC should be watching this. This is, of course, published by Vertigo, so hopefully they are. So it was another good, solid Astro City issue. This would be a good one to jump on. It's totally the beginning of a story, and would be fun to read. And you don't, as people always mention, you don't need to have read Astro City in the past to understand what's going on. They're always written as, you can start here, you can start there. Often you can start on a single issue with a single issue story. In this case, it's going to be a 3-issue story. So this is a great starting point. So overall, I guess I liked the Astro City, I liked Batwoman, I liked Alex and Ada. Those are the comics that I liked a lot. Nothing like shot off fireworks in my head, and maybe I was hoping for a week like that, just because I was feeling grouchy about other things. I did get a fun little thing in the mail. Oh, no water left in my glass. Which was two back issues of a magazine called Back Issue, which I learned of probably first through Shannon, 4ST String Bend, or whatever his name is. Sorry, Shannon, I can never remember your handle properly, or at least say it out loud. And I think maybe some other people have talked about Back Issue. I want to say Garrett, a comic book guy, or Comic Book Guys Rules, or somebody else. Anyway, it was when Shannon and perhaps other people showed this back issue that has the Alex Ross cover and is devoted to tabloid size and Treasury edition comics, which I'm really interested in starting to collect. But so far I've mostly just read stuff in this issue, which is devoted to Bronze Age B teams, including the Defenders and Doom Patrol. And it's fun, they go kind of in-depth on things, like with the Defenders. They literally go issue by issue, or arc by arc, and tell you a little bit about each arc, and then give you quotes from the creators of the time of what they were thinking. Like I thought it was interesting where J.M. Matthias says The dark fantasy characters are also natural vehicles for exploring the kind of spiritual, philosophical, and psychological issues that obsess me. And I guess that's what's interesting about DeMatteis as a writer, and also sometimes a stumbling block with him when he's too into that stuff. So it's interesting now as he's doing Justice League Dark and he's doing Phantom Stranger at DC, whether he'll find a way to explore his philosophical issues effectively or just make things bungle tangle. I don't know. But that's a total aside. It was really fun reading the stuff I've read in here so far. Obviously, probably mostly aimed at old geezers who want to relive the Bronze Age. Somewhere in here is a checklist of every single Treasury edition that came out in the Bronze Age, so I'm going to find that really useful as I try to collect some. I've only got three of them right now. This one actually is post-Bronze Age, but it's a tabloid size. I really like things big. Bigger's better, I guess. And then I've got 2 Conan Treasury editions from the 80s, or from the 70s, I should say. And I plan to get more. So that was kind of the brightest spot in my week of reading comics. I feel like there's other stuff I wanted to comment on, but I can't think of what it was now. So maybe if I get some free time, I'll do a vlog. The irony is, work is actually dull as dishwater, whatever the expression is. I have to just sort of sit at my computer and find little things to do at work because there's nothing to do. Our clients are not very active during this holiday season, so they're going to hit me with tons of work in January and February. Right now I have to just pretend to be busy because I can't just sit there and read a book, unfortunately. But then I come home and the holiday seasons, it's all busy craziness. So it's just this kind of odd impatience and then busyness combination that perhaps is making me grumpy, plus a few other subtle things going on. So if I find time, I'll do, and I remember the issues I wanted to talk about, probably partially due the canceling of, now I'm remembering, the canceling of some stuff at DC is making me think how I'm shifting away. 2 years ago, or a little more than 2 years ago with the New 52, I came back to Marvel, to DC and to Marvel to some extent in a big way, with a renewed, kind of fascination with stuff that was going on at the Big Two. And I now have been worn down by 2 years, and DC has only begun to really hit us with the crossover events, and I just feel worn down by them, like with the Batgirl, and then just the slow attrition on the kind of odder characters like Animal Man. As they go away, I have less that really excites me at DC, and more. And as the Marvel and DC books all go up to $3.99, I just conclude I should read them in trade, if I'm going to read them at all. So I'm currently in the position where I'm kind of looking around for more indie stuff to buy. I kind of want to keep my pull list at the comic book store up to 30 issues because that's where you begin to get the 20% off. And now that I've been getting the 20% off, I don't want to let go of the 20% off. That's kind of stupid also, but that's kind of how I'm feeling. Okay, guys, talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.